Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we're taking a look at the rather huge Lian Li Lancool 3 ARGB in black. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we're taking a look at the absolute monster that is the Lian Li Lancool 3 ARGB. It's so big, in fact, I've had to move my camera onto a separate tripod a bit further back off the table than where we normally are, so if there's anything wrong with the video then I do apologise. It is what it is, but I have to get this thing in the shot, and it's actually not an easy thing to do. This is a big boy. If you're looking for a large form factor case which can fit in pretty much anything, and I mean literally anything you could possibly think of, this is right up your street. So we've got support for 3 radiators, with the largest being 420mm up in this top section. You can stick a 360 in the front should you wish to, and also you can stick a 360 on the bottom. Not only that, you can put in here up to 10 fans, of which half of those at least are going to be 140mm fans, which, yeah, it's just insane amounts of room. You can also put in custom cooling. There's special ports for filling, little filling port on the top, all that kind of stuff. We've got loads and loads of mesh, literally tons of mesh, top mesh, front mesh, side meshes, lots of glass, lots of flaps, lots of hinges. There's a lot going on here. So we're going to go through in today's video, going to do kind of like a bit of a teardown, look at all the different components. I'm absolutely positive that I'm going to miss something out in this overview of the case. So if I do apologise. This case actually very kindly sent to us by David Aitken, who lives actually quite local, which is quite handy because carrying this thing around or sending it in the post is going to be somewhat expensive. And talking of expensive, this is not a cheap case, as you can probably guess, because it's Lian Li. Lian Li don't do cheap cases, although technically I suppose you could say the 215, which was, for my money, one of the better cases they've done, especially at its budget rated price of around about £70, although it has tempted to shoot up a little bit to nearly 100. This one at the moment, this is the black version in RGB, so you've got the addressable RGB fans, 3 of them included, 140mm, plus you get a non-RGB fan on the back for some reason, I don't know why, but for that you can pick it up for somewhere in the region of about £140 at the moment from places like Overclockers here in the UK. Amazon, for some bizarre reason, normally Amazon are pretty good pricing, but Amazon at the moment they've got this for 170. I'll put some links in the video description below so you can check out local pricing near you. This case isn't for the faint-hearted, and actually you do need to be relatively strong to be able to physically move it. It's somewhere in the region of about 15 kilos empty, which is, yeah, it is insane. But there's a lot of stuff in here, lots of metal panels and lots of things that we can remove. So speaking of that, we should start and actually look at some of those things that we're talking about. So first of all, the thing that you're probably noticing straight away is this front mesh section. So behind here, we've got 3 140mm addressable RGB fans. And this is a really cool feature, which you may or may not like. I have a certain feeling about this case already that it is, think of it as being the kind of the BMW or Mercedes of the case world, but do throw in a little bit of Tesla in with that as well, which we'll discuss a little bit more later. So they've engineered the bejesus out of this thing, they really have. So normally for most normal human beings, taking off the front panel of your case, generally it's a quick tug on the bottom, so to speak, and the front panel comes off, but no. Lian Li don't do that. They do things a little bit differently. So in order to actually remove the front panel, what you need to do is first of all pull out this latch here, which opens the side glass, which you can then open out a little bit more. You can do the same on the other side. So pull this flap and the glass on the other side comes out. Yep, glass on both sides. And then you can grab the front panel and gently ease it off the front. It does flex a little bit more than I would like. And it's actually quite a weighty unit. So as you can see, this is it completely removed. So nice and easy. Got a nice mesh there for cleaning purposes. The fans themselves are actually set back a little bit as well, which means you can actually get a little bit more airflow into them rather than being like slap bang right up against the mesh there. And now you can see the fans. So these are the 3 140mm addressable RGB fans. They're not the general type of fans that you'd see with normal connections on. So they are PWM fans, but they do come out in a very kind of strange connection for the addressable RGB, which is quite common with other case manufacturers, but it's not your normal 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB, although there is an adapter which then converts it to that at the very end. So it's all kind of daisy chained in there. We'll take a look at that later. The 4-pin for the PWM, all the fans are kind of daisy chained into one header. So as it stands at the moment, you'd plug that single fan header into either a port on your motherboard or ideally some kind of powered hub just to take some of that strain off the motherboard. 3 fans on one header is often not ideal, especially if it's 140mm fans, which do take a little bit more extra juice. And also these are pretty powerful fans as well, so there is that to consider. Anyway, so you can see this. This whole section comes out, so there's 2 screws. You've probably seen some B-roll of this because it's actually quite difficult to do on camera. So there's a screw at the front, undo that screw. There's one on the side there as well. And then this whole radiator section and fan section all comes out in one unit. It will only come out as far as the cables will allow it to, but this gives you the option of putting in radiators, fans, etc., however you want it to be. Yeah, I kind of like that. I don't think this in itself is particularly over-engineered, the actual mounting section. And if I can actually try and get to it, which is not the easiest thing to do. So take the 2 screws out, and then this you can pull forward or push forward. It's a little bit clunky, so it doesn't always fit in that well. It is on kind of guides on the side, so you've got the guides there, and they just pop in, so you can see this is all open now. And to get it to go back in, you'd think you just push it flat in. Sometimes it'll go, sometimes it won't. Yeah, this time being one of those where it won't. So it's, although it's been kind of well engineered, it is a little bit on the fiddly side. So I think I did it last by getting in the bottom section first of all, letting it fall down a little bit, then that goes in. So yeah, there you go. A little bit on the fiddly side, personally, I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section. But yeah, does a good job, and it's actually much better than having a solid panel there which is fixed. Something else you can do with this as well is you can actually rotate that bit as well. So if you take the fans off, you can rotate it, spin it around. So then it's either going to push fans forward a little bit, or maybe push a radiator back a little bit, depending on what you want to do. So let's stick this front panel back on. Relatively, again, straightforward to do. It kind of just pushes into place, get it lined up. There we go, not too bad at all. Something I have noticed already, actually, if you have the fans at full blast, this metal section here, you can probably pick it up where it is. Kind of taps, and even with the glass closed, a little bit loose at the top, so if there's any vibration in here, if you've got mechanical drives, you may at some point hear that rattling a little bit. I'm not too sure. I'm not doing a build in this. I'm going to leave that to Dave. It's his PC, but potentially that might be something which you might want to stick a bit of rubber or something in there just to maybe isolate that a little bit. But it's a good idea, and the fact that it opens that side glass panel, yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it. Anyway, moving on to the I/O. So on the top section here, you've got the I/O. The I/O actually you can move, so you can actually take that out, put it at the bottom, although it's on a weird angle, so if you do, you'll be able to press the power button and maybe adjust the lighting controls, but the chance of actually plugging in any USBs is going to be extremely difficult on that very, very strange angle. But we do have a color button on the top. There's also a mode button, so that will take you through the RGBs. We'll look at that a little bit later. There's a combo headset mic jack, which I'm not a great fan of. I prefer to see 2 separate ones, but I guess it does take up a little bit less room. There's a reset button next to that, and in the middle you've got a power button with an illumination around the outside as well. Then you've got USB 3.0, Type A, 2 ports, and a USB Type C, which is always a nice thing to see, although pretty much expected at this kind of price. So let's take a look at the side section. So you see tempered glass panel, so it's kind of like a split panel. So you've got the glass at the top, and there's a nice surround around it as well to cover up fingerprints, all that kind of stuff. Again, just flip this out, and this opens up or pushes out. Literally, it is just a lever. So there's a little lever that comes out there, so you push that, and all it does, it basically pushes the metal away from the magnets, which are top and bottom. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward, does what it needs to do. The hinge pins, for me, I think, aren't the greatest. They do appear to be a little bit on the wobbly side in certain areas. The 2 for the glass on this side actually seem to be okay. And something else they've done which is really nice is they've actually offset the pins slightly. So when you're putting actually on the side panel, maybe I can show you that now. So in order to take the panel off, you just lift it off these hinges. So as you can see, the bottom one actually is a little bit longer than the top one. Now, the reason for that is it actually helps you to line up the panel. So if we try and do that now, so you line up the bottom one first of all, get it onto the kind of tapered edge, then you can let it fall down and the top one goes on a lot easier. So that is actually very cool. I do like that. That is a very nice little thing. These hinges, in some areas on the case, are a little bit loose, but these ones, those particular ones actually seem to be rock solid. So that's definitely good, being that this is the panel that you're likely to open the most. At the bottom, you've got this fold out section, as you can see on that angle there. I'll spin it back round. You can see that a little bit clearer in there. So you've got 2 drive bays in here, hard drives or SSDs in here, 2.5 inch or 3 inch drives. It also comes with an accessories box as well with actual additional trays which can go in there. So metal trays, there's a tiny little grub screw underneath which is almost impossible to get to and it's been done up super tight from the factory. But yeah, you can get a screwdriver, undo that, pull that caddy out, put your drives in. So 2 drives can go in there. If you want to put an additional 2 drives in there, in the accessories box, which is actually quite a cool accessories box, quite a nice experience. So when you open this up, you've got your owner's manual, which tells you about how it all goes together. You've also got a really nice little box of screws. So all the screws you could possibly need, and there's a divider in there so you can set up your screws however you want to. But you also get 2 drive caddies as well. So these drive caddies, similar sort of deal. So you put your drives in there, all the screws are included, but these are actually metal. So what you can do is actually on the top, there's a section and you can screw your drives in and attach them in there. So you can have 4 3.5 inch drives in that bottom section, or of course you can use smaller drives if you want to. Those caddies, like I said, can be removed. So you can fit up to a 220mm power supply in this bottom section, although you may want to remove the secondary drive tray from this end here, and don't get them mixed up. That one will only physically fit in that slot or thereabouts, it slides along, and this one again, same deal. If you look at the actual bottom of the drive caddies, there's little pins, and one of them has got a slightly different pin out section, so it does fit in a different place, but it will make sense if you ever put one together. Most people, I feel, probably won't ever use the drive cages, probably take them out, to be honest with you, if you wanted to, but yeah, they are there should you want to use them. This bit on the bottom, it's pretty cool. So you've got a ventilated mesh. Something I've found about this, in regard to my earlier comment about Tesla. Now, anyone who's owned or worked on a Tesla will know that very few of them have actually got any panels which are straight or even match up. And that is something which I've noticed on here straight away. Because we've got this hinged glass panel, and probably because the length as well, the actual gap at the top here is bigger than what it is at the bottom, which means that something isn't straight. Now, being this front panel snaps into place, there's not really a lot you can do on there. So the adjustment is going to be from those pins at the back. So as you can see already, well, possibly you can, this is actually sticking out a little bit. So I've actually got to push that in a little bit extra just to make it sit flush. So if I open that up again, if you do that, it's absolutely fine. As soon as you close the glass, you'll see it's catching a little bit on this side. So just where it's not quite straight now, it could be because the fact that it's so heavy, it's actually flexing a little bit on this table, which may not be totally flat. But I think it's more a case of the actual hinges. It just needs to be bent up a little bit, which I'm kind of a little bit uncomfortable doing because it's not actually my computer. But in fact, I think that might have actually done it. Just a very slight little twist of that hinge. Yeah, I think we're actually good to go now. Let's try that again. No, so it is still catching. But yeah, it's one of those things. Part and parcel of having something which has got so many moving parts is the fact that tolerances are going to change and things like that are going to happen. Anyway, let's move on. So I'm going to take off the glass panel off this side, and we can take a look inside, and there's an absolute ton of room in here. There really is. So on this bottom section, you can put 3 120mm fans or a 360mm radiator should you wish to. These actual trays, there's 3 trays, you can take those out individually. So there's a couple of screws and they just fold out. Or if you want to, you can actually, you can see at the front there, there's a screw there and a screw there. So you can undo those, take this section out altogether if you want to leave it open. Or if you want to, you can actually, when you're putting a radiator on here, It's going to be obviously sandwiched up against the PCI Express slots at the back, so you can actually move it forward about an inch, so there's extra mounting holes there. So unscrew that, lift it up, pull it across a little bit, put it down, although that is going to eat into some of the space for the front radiator. But certainly it's nice to have more options and be able to kind of choose to do it your way. Talking of doing it your way, cable management is going to be very easy as well, because at the bottom we've got 3 massive cutouts there for passing through things like your USB 3.0s, all those kinds of things, HD audio, front panel connectors, all that kind of good stuff. And also you've got the cable management bracket here as well, which actually does move as well. So this bit with the rubber grommets in, if you're using an ATX board, this is in the kind of ATX position as it is now. If you're using an extended ATX, which you can put in here, undo the 2 screws at the back, this whole thing slides forward a couple of inches just to give you that a bit of extra room, and also you can then choose exactly where you want it so it's close to your motherboard. Some boards have slightly different sizing, so you might want to slide it in a little bit more just so there isn't a big gap between your cables and also your motherboard. This section here again can be used for various things, so it's designed so it's flexible in terms of you can, if you want to, put in a reservoir, attach the reservoir to these holes down here or up here, wherever you want to do. If you put a decent sized reservoir in there, again, depending on what you do, that may impact what you do in this front section. Other than that, all of the mountings for motherboards are pre-installed, ready to go, so that's very cool. Loads of pass-throughs at the top section as well, but overall just a cavernous amount of room in here. You're looking at, I think it's 187 millimeters tall for CPU coolers, and graphics cards up to 435 millimeters in length. Now, obviously, depending on radiators, etc., that may eat into that. Realistically, RTX 4090 is not going to be a problem in here at all. You've also got a lot of depth as well, so even though those cards are getting chunkier and chunkier, this will fit it, and it actually probably wouldn't look that bad in here. I would probably like to see that happen, to be honest with you. Also, PCI Express browning plates at the back. You spin that round, so those are all removable and all meshed and ventilated. Lots of mesh here as well. On the back you've got the 140mm fan, which is just a normal, regular, run-of-the-mill fan. No addressable RGB, no RGB, no nothing. It is, fortunately, just checking, it is actually a PWM fan, so that's at least something. So yeah, if you want to put some different fans in there, probably a good idea. I'll try and find out what the actual fans are that Lian Li are using in the front section. I'll try and list those in the comments or the video notes underneath, so if you want to replace that back fan with something else, then you can definitely do that. So also on the back you've got the power supply mounting area, so this is actually quite nice. So you can just undo 2 screws there, those are captive as well. Attach this to your power supply and then bosh, put it straight back in. Happy days. Obviously for cable management purposes you can attach your modular cables, all that kind of good stuff. So yeah, that's very handy that you can do that. Other than that, pretty much standard layout, a little bit of extra ventilation at the top, which is always nice to see. And at the very top there is an additional screw. This is for, believe it or not, this is for the actual ventilation on the top. So normally most of us who buy regular cheapskate cases, your ventilation on the top, your filtration is just a magnetic floppy filter. Lian Li, no sir, we don't go for that. This is an entire panel. So this is your ventilation mesh, as you can see, it's all been done very nicely, nice mesh, and nice and easy to clean, but it is a solid unit. So you do actually get to take out the entire panel, which is yeah, kind of mad if you think about it. Turning the case onto the side a little bit, that's something actually that you might not want to do, because obviously those glass panels are only held on with magnets, so if you do tip it over onto its side, do support the glass, otherwise it's going to have a tendency to try and flip out, as does the tray on the bottom, which is already, as you can see, has already popped open anyway. If there were drives attached there, it would be even worse. So do bear that in mind if you're putting in this on a flat surface to do any maintenance work on your motherboard, your coolers, all that kind of stuff. On this top section, so again, you can put a 420mm radiator in this top section if you want to. The only caveat is if you do that, you won't be able to use the rear fan. That will have to come out, which maybe isn't such a bad thing anyway. Otherwise, 360mm, 280s, 240s, etc. in here, no problems at all. As you can see, there's an absolute ton of cutouts and options in here, which is good, but also slightly to its detriment as well, because there's only actually these very small channels here, which actually are open for airflow. Everything else is kind of semi-closed off or meshed. Not a deal breaker, but it would have been nice to see it maybe a little bit more open somehow, but a difficult thing to do engineering wise. Speaking of engineering wise, this panel does come out as well. So as with everything else, it's very, very modular. That screw there, that screw there. This folds out, giving you complete access to the top. So if you've built your system and you've forgotten to plug in your top EPS connector, isn't a problem. Take off your top filter, take off this section, and you can get really easy access to the top of your motherboard here should you need to. Although saying that, it is actually spaced out quite well. There's a really decent gap between the top of the case and where the motherboard ends. So even if you're putting a radiator in here with some chunky fans, you should be able to still access that EPS connector very easily. And that takes us to the back of the case, which has got glass on it for some reason. I genuinely don't understand the necessity for glass on the back of a computer case, especially when there's covers for everything anyway. It's the side that you never really see, or unlikely to ever want to see, so I feel that this is just kind of over-engineered just for the sake of it. Maybe it's a production thing, it's easier to produce that, being they're doing that for one side to do it for the other. I honestly don't know. Personally, I'd have rather seen just a completely flat panel on there. Maybe have this section as well. I'm not entirely convinced. I don't use hard drives enough to warrant actually getting regular access in here anyway, so for me this whole section is a little bit superfluous, if that is even a word. You do have the option as well for adding more drives, so you've got 3 sections here, so you can put in SSDs on this bottom deck if you wanted to. So I think it's up to about 12 drives in total you can actually attach in this thing, which is very, very insane in my opinion. Anyway, pull the catch, and this opens up. Again, same sort of deal, so we can just remove this. It's on the same sort of pillars as well, so that comes off nicely and is nice and easy to put back on. And then we have more drive access, so another 2 SSDs here, or 2.5-inch drives. Those are actually screwed into place. There's 4 screws that hold those on, and there's spring-loaded catches on the side, so you don't need any tools as such. If you just put in drive straight in, just stretch out the side, put your drive in. There's little pillar pins on there, and that all locks into place, so that's all nice. Velcro channels there as well, so when it comes to cable management, you're probably thinking, well, how do I run my cables up through there? Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. This section pops open and you can lift this out. So removable panel, all on magnets, as with everything else. This is the one where I found the pillars were a little bit loose. That one just bends around a little bit, but it's not the end of the world. So Velcro there, so you can channel your EPS connection down through there. They've actually done something quite considerate as well. They had actually cut out a section of this metal as well, so when that's in place, your cable's going to run down through there unimpeded. Might have been nice to see a little bit of rubber on there possibly, just as like some sort of protection against EPS 12 volt, but I don't think it's going to be a massive issue. Section here for mounting controllers, so if you want to put one of Lian Li's RGB or fan controllers on, you can stick that onto there, and there's 2 positions for that, so you can put it either there or there. So I'm going to put it back into this position this time round. Nice big cutouts at the top there for running your cables through for fans, radiators at the top, etc, etc. So I think that's pretty much it for there. Then you've got this side panel as well, which also just pops out. That one's actually got a particularly strong magnet and actually makes the whole of the back flex, so that's pretty good. That one again just lifts out and you can remove that in its entirety. That was the one that I had actually a little problems trying to get back in. That one, I have tightened up some of the, yeah, that pin is the loosest one. You can almost hear that rattling. So that I've tried to tighten up. Fortunately, it is riveted in, so there's not really a great deal I can do to try and rectify that, but it is what it is. It still does the job, and once it's all in there, you'll never notice it, but it is one of those kind of Tesla fit and finish things where you just notice there's a few little things which aren't quite perfect, but it's a mass-produced case, so what do you expect? So moving across to the cable tray, so we've got this section here, undo those 2 thumb screws there, and you can slide this section across. So again, if you're using an ATX board, then you'd want it probably there. If you're using an extended ATX, you can move that across there. And also again, if you're putting a reservoir on the front and you're using that panel to attach to, you can just get it exactly where you want it to. Something which would be quite cool as well, if you're doing water cooling and you're doing hard tubes, you might just need an extra kind of millimeter or so just because your tubes are just slightly too short or something, in which case then you can just obviously move that very slightly, move your whole reservoir, just move it out a little bit, just enough to get your pipe either in or to get it out, which could be actually quite handy and save you a bit of time. So that is very nice. Rubberized grommets as well. Velcro, this is their kind of, I believe this is patented. So this actual tie down section, so you've got a section there, so front panel connections there, that wraps around there, and then you can have your kind of main ATX power and all that kind of stuff going up through there, which you can cable tie and channel down nicely. So going to be very easy to cable manage, it really is. There's plenty of punch outs as well in various places. A little bit of flex on this back panel, which I don't know, I'm not overly keen on that. It's a little bit on the flimsy side, but I guess because you have got this cutout here, it is going to be a little bit more on the flimsy side, but yeah, it is what it is. Moving down to the bottom, so you've got this absolute gargantuan mess of wires. So this is for your addressable RGB and your fans up front. It all basically terminates into these two cables. So you've got your PWM and also your 3-pin 5-volt addressable RGB, which is off of this adapter, which is onto Lian Li's own type of connection. A few other manufacturers do use that. I have seen it before, but it's not overly common, but still. All of that is daisy chained up together, and also because each one of the fans has a kind of fly lead or spur coming off of it, for fans, they're all daisy chained together. That's not a problem at all. And also there are 3 additional addressable RGB outputs, so you can plug those in or daisy chain other devices to them should you need to. All of the RGB and lighting, etc., the controller, all powered from this single SATA plug, so nice and easy to do and in a pretty decent place and able to do that. And with all that said and done, that's all your cabling done for your fans, etc. Then you've got your front panel connections, something which I love to see. This is really cool. It's such a simple thing, but it's a very nice thing to see. This is your front I/O connection, so your power switch, etc., on just a single block connector. So just bosh, put it onto your motherboard, job done. If for some bizarre reason you've got a motherboard which doesn't adhere to the standards, which I think pretty much every board on the market does currently, you can, if you want to, obviously de-pin that and do it however you want to. But for, I would say, arguably 99.9% of all motherboards on the market, that is going to work straight out of the box. Also, you've got USB 3.0, so 2 cables there, denoting 2 ports up the top. HD audio, not quite sleeved up to the very end, but yeah, it's not the end of the world. And also, awesome, you have a USB Type-C, so that's going to be 10 gigabit per second, and these are going to be your 5 gigabit per second connections. So moving further on down to the bottom, these drive trays, like I said before, so these are adjustable. They're on thumb screws at the bottom there. So if you loosen off the thumb screw, you can take that out all together, and then you can slide the drive cage a little bit of adjustment on there, and you can, if you want to, remove it in its entirety. Super solid construction, like that a lot. So you get a drive in there, you can slot in another drive caddy on the top as well, should you need to. Yeah, it's all pretty good, like that a lot. It's very sturdy indeed, it really is. And if you undo the screw at the bottom, which I can actually get to now it's been removed. So undo that screw, and then you can pull out your caddy, put your drive in. Like I say, if you want to, you can actually use these on the top as well. And then the screw goes back in the top. You can put your other drive caddy in there. So 2 drives into 1 section, nice and easy to do, he says. It does go in, honestly. It's just me being cack-handed, it really is. That's the trouble being left-handed. It's a medical condition, look it up. So anyway, with that out of the way, you can see, obviously you can take that one out as well. That's going to give you a massive amount of space on the bottom there. The actual caddy, the track that the caddy runs on, if you want to, you could take that as well. It's only held in with a couple of screws, so you could take that as well to give you a complete clear section. It's all ventilated and meshed on the bottom as well. And actually there is a pull-out filter, which we'll take a look at shortly. So if I put this all back in, and then we can have a look at the bottom of the case. Before we look at the bottom, I'm not too sure if I mentioned it or not, but this section on the bottom is actually removable. 4 screws there, that little bit comes out, leaving it wide open. I can't remember if I even said that or not. There's so many things on this case, it is pretty insane. And now I can't get it to go back together. Here we are, rookie mistake. That wasn't hinged properly. Happy days. Right, so let's take a look at the bottom. So on the bottom, it's raised up quite a bit actually, about 1.5 inches, and you've got rubber feet on the bottom to isolate it from vibrational noises, all that kind of stuff. You can see here the adjustable section for the pins for the actual drive caddies, so that's all the different options there. You also got this removable filter on the bottom. Very nice to see, you like those a lot. Probably would have liked to have seen a full length one, like they did in the 215. I think it was a 215 that had it. Pretty sure it did, but yeah, a full length one would have been nicer to see, but because obviously you've got a lot of stuff going on there, it isn't entirely necessary, and yeah, totally serviceable. Okay, so this wouldn't be a mic's unboxing without taking a look at the RGB, would it now? So at the moment we've got this powered up, it's just got a power supply going to the SATA connection. I'm also using my Noctua fan controller as well, just so we can take a look at the fan noise. Let's take a look at the RGB first of all. So you've got your C button, which is for colors. Who'd have thought? So you can cycle through various available colors there. Yeah, pretty straightforward stuff. And the one next to it is the mode button. So you press that, you've got your unicorn puke. I think there's 8 modes, but the 8th mode is basically passing the system back to your addressable RGB controller on your motherboard. So that's something which is a little bit weird. Normally you press and hold a button and it switches over, but it doesn't appear to do that at the moment. Whether or not that will be something that it does when a motherboard is in here, I'm not entirely sure. But you can go through and choose your various lighting styles, and you'll come to one which is basically nothing, which then would be your motherboard taking control. So then you press it back and it goes back to the beginning again. So fan wise, at the moment I've got these set to, I think it's pretty much amongst the lowest setting they'll go. So that is on full blast. When they're actually on full blast, they're arguably quite noisy. They do move an absolute metric shit ton of air. There's no other way of saying it. It is like a hurricane in there, it really is. But you do have the noise to go with that as well, which is unfortunate. So taking it down to 50% is where I think most people are going to be comfortable doing. And even with that, even my hand at the back of the case there, I can still feel plenty of air going through that case. So it is still going to move an absolute ton of air. I did do a little subsection of this with different fan speeds, but I might as well do that here now. So that is 100%, 75%, approximately 50%, 25%, which is effectively silent, and on their very lowest setting, absolute silence, not even the sound of airflow moving. So you can get them to be as silent as you want them to be. Obviously, depending on your application and your cooling style, you may want to ramp them up or just set a curve so that when the system is under duress, then they ramp up to full speed. Or maybe you just want to keep them so they're always under sort of 55, 60%, just to keep it completely silent, even under those loads. The choice, as they say, is entirely up to you, as is the choice to buy one from any of the links in the video description. Dave, I'm so glad that you've actually let me take a look at this before you've done your build on it. It's one of those cases where when it came out, I was like, I really, really want one of those. And now I've actually had it in front of me, I'm in a very precarious position. I think predominantly because of price. I love the case. I think it's a fantastic case. I do wish there was a little bit more of attention to detail to some of the fixtures and fittings, such as panel straightness, those little wobbly pillars, etc. It's not the end of the world, but this case does offer an absolute ton of flexibility. And for me as an individual or as someone who's reviewing components, it's great, because if someone says, I've got a 420mm radiator I want you to review, not a problem, Bosch, put it in the top, job done. If they say, I've got a huge graphics card to review, boom, put it in there, it's not going to be a problem. So in terms of flexibility, yeah, the world really is your oyster with this one. There's so much room in there, you can really make it your own. The only thing which is going to go against it, in my personal opinion, is the price. At closer to £200 from places like Amazon, I think you do have to kind of step back a bit and think about it quite hard. At around about the 140 mark, I think it makes a lot more sense. And its only kind of real comparison that I can think of is the Colink Citadel ATX, which isn't that much smaller, to be honest with you. It's a very, very similar setup. Obviously, it doesn't have quite the elaborate gull wing side doors and the drive options, but it's a very similar case and can hold a very similar amount of hardware, and is arguably about 20 to 40 pounds cheaper depending where you're shopping. So if it wasn't for the fact I had the Colink ATX RGB, I would be more seriously considering actually buying one of these myself. But because they are actually so similar, albeit the Colink is slightly easier to work on due to the fact it doesn't have all those extra bits and bobs going on, then I think I'm less likely to go for this. But if you don't have the luxury of having the case like that already, and you basically want what is possibly the best case on the market, and you're building a new PC, then my suggestion is go out and buy one. I don't think you'll regret it. Anyway, what I think isn't important, what you think is, so let us know your comments in the comments section below. Thanks again, massive shout out to Dave for letting me take a look at this one before he does his build on it. And maybe when he gets his build done, we'll post some pictures on the Discord so you can all check it out and critique it for him. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up for now. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.